What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today, we're gonna try to give you some answers, some truthful answers, specifically about ISO-8 and the playtest that I've been a part of for this week. So, we have some restrictions on what we can talk about, so I'll get into those in a little bit. We'll briefly touch on the blog stuff, but I really just want to give you guys kind of a open mic, raw, just this is how I feel, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I'm concerned about, this is what they did from the last time, type of conversation. So, and that's all it's going to be. It's going to be a conversation from me to you about my thoughts with this. And again, I'm going to try to hit every angle while staying within the parameters that have been laid in front of me, because as you know, this playtest is still going on. So, and a lot of this stuff is still subject to change. So understandably, they're trying to limit exactly what can be talked about at this point, but I think it was very nice and good of them to get some of this out so they can see some of the feedback based on what we think and what you guys respond to basically what we tell you. So anyway, let's get into some of this. You can't handle the truth! Bring me WolverThor! Alright, so I'm not going to sit here and reread you guys what's on the blog. I'm just going to kind of quickly go through and touch upon some of the things they've got on here. So you can kind of see it. The interface they have, I will say, is pretty nice. It's pretty easy to understand. The stats they have on it, pretty straightforward. That's good. So that general kind of feel, I will say, is not bad. I like what they did there. Very user-friendly. There's some things here with these crystals and how they're kind of look and build where it could be confusing to some, but I will also say that you can also look up here and see these little numbers that go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. That's good. So it's kind of like, all right, I get it. And I anticipate at some point we'll get green ones, then we'll get blue ones, then we'll get purple ones, then we'll get orange ones, but that's purely speculation, nothing based on what we're doing at the moment. They talk about, you know, how you can adjust your classes and all that kind of stuff for the theory crafting part, and they show these specific classes here. We're not allowed to talk about the details within these. Obviously, there's some stuff just after this, which is clearly public knowledge. But I do like, I'll say, the functionality here where you can kind of customize your tunes a little bit. And you're gonna have to know what these mean when you fight other characters. So it really gives you a multi-layer theory crafting for your own characters and how you counter somebody else, which really kind of spider webs a lot of different teams in the game, where you could start seeing, you know, a character that might not normally be with a certain team. They might be brought over because when combined with one of these classes, it might make that team potentially more dangerous or bring it a certain aspect that they didn't have previously. So in that regard, I think is pretty cool. They list the classes here: the Raider, Striker, Skirmisher, Fortifier, Healer. Again, I don't want to get into the details of exactly what those are. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, the stats they increase. I just don't want to take any risk of potentially violating the NDA we're under. So I will say that, generally speaking, as you look at these, you can kind of get an idea of what they do to an extent, outside of maybe the Skirmisher and Raider. But I will say that one of these guys puts a mark on a character, and based on that mark, another one of these can potentially, you know, hit again, do certain things to that character, flip buffs, stuff like that. So it really gives you a dynamic where you're kind of like, oh, if I can make one of my characters, you know, this type, and this other class type is going to come and, you know, do an extra hit or flip a buff, you know, that is actually, it's nice. It gives you a way to kind of play around a little bit more with those teams. Here you can again see they've actually got some numbers in this one in particular, and again, this is on the blog, so I'm not worried about sharing this specific number situation because it's already public knowledge, but you can see that a fortifier here, you know, gives barrier on spawn. So it's like, okay, you know, that's kind of neat. And then it also talks about how the classes can be, you know, leveled up as you go through it and unlock the next ability. And it shows here again, this is on the blog. I feel like it's appropriate to say that because this is not anything that's not hidden from anybody already. You can kind of see how some stats potentially go up here in this particular fortifier case and how these crystals and the levels go up as you go. And I'll get into what I think about, you know, again, no number talks, but just my general feel for this in the game and the state of the game given all this stuff. Here it talks about the marked purple icon, which I touched upon earlier. Very interesting dynamic. Do I love it? It is really niche. And I don't know. I'm still a little torn on this one. I could see it being fun if applied right, but there's certain aspects of this. Okay, it doesn't say it here, and I don't see it on the banned list of topics, but so this marked, basically, the way I understand it is it pops up when you want the appropriate class crits on the character. So you really are looking for characters that have a lot of crit in that regard. That part of it, I don't know if I really love because, you know, crit is RNG. How many tunes are actually critting nonstop? I don't know. I mean, you know, then it's like an AoE tune who crits. You know, those are the ones that you probably want to get this particular class on. But I will say the general dynamic of the mark is a kind of interesting aspect of the game, and it's neat. It's not a trash thing. I do think it's something where under the right applications, I could see this playing a little bit in Raid too. It'd be really nice. Like they mentioned, the campaign is where you're gonna get some of this stuff. I can't get into a lot of what you get and how hard or easy it is. But you know, that aspect, so in theory, you're already kind of going here, you scroll over, you go to your ISO-8 campaign. It will take some time up front, obviously, to beat the campaign, but similar to some of those character campaigns, I think once you get it unlocked, you know, you're clicking your auto and you're doing your typical farm. So a couple of the questions they have on here I do want to hit before I go over into my raw, you know, truth about what I think about this thing. The stats, they're not random anymore. Thank you. That was a gigantic problem with the first version of this playtest. Way too random. They fixed that. It's pretty simple. Percentages and stats, that's it. Okay, so that part, good job. Speed, currently they don't have any plans for speed, which is great. Obviously they say currently, which always gives you an out. Okay, there is no gold required for this, which is nice. The ions are something that's required. Obviously with any sort of resource, you have a potential bottleneck. I'll talk about that more a little bit, but again, I can't talk about specific numbers. But it is important to note that gold is not specific to this dynamic at all. So at least at the moment. So the ions are really kind of your spending resource for this stuff. The class changes freely. It's awesome. Thank you. That's great. You know, again, it kind of adds this different dynamic. The current plan is to not let the characters switch around with the ISOs, which is interesting. You are able to kind of, and I'll get into this in a little bit, but the crystals, you know, you can, once you put it on the tune, and if you upgrade it, it comes off the tune. So you can kind of reuse them in that regard. Add significant time play. Look, technically anything new in the game is going to add time. Is this crazy time? To actually get the stuff? No. To sit there and talk and think and strategize, theory craft, it could. You could spend more time thinking about things. You know, with me, someone like me, spreadsheeting, yeah, it's going to be more time. It's going to be more discussions about it. So, you know, it is going to add more time to the game. It's not, you don't just blindly do these things, or you shouldn't. So in that regard, it's true and false. It's nice to see that they also, right after that, talk about the health bars. So now let's get into the truth mode of this thing, where it's just raw, just me telling you my experiences with this thing, plain and simple. Okay, so there's a lot to cover here. I don't want to go on forever on this. but I want to give you guys my true impression. So first I want to say that I know that ISO-8 is a huge sore spot for a lot of people. There are people who are potentially quitting the game over this dynamic. I get it. I understand it. I'm, on the fence with this kind of concept of adding more things to the game, but also understanding that they have to continue to add mechanisms to the game to keep us playing, to make it so that our characters need to find a way to get stronger, and also find new financial aspects to make the game money. So I did the first play test, and frankly, it was too much. I barely did. I did it for a few days. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't do this much. It's way too grindy. It's way too random. I felt like it was Diablo, where it's like I might get a piece and it didn't have a couple components that were right. Well, I'm like, that piece is garbage. And you do it again, well, that piece is garbage. And I'm like, there's already too much RNG in the game. That was before, okay? So the one thing that I for sure want to say about this is they fixed a lot of that. Where when I did this first play test, I was just like, this is, like I just said. Now it doesn't feel that way as far as the RNG aspect of it. They still have the classes that are tied to the crystals. Okay, fine. There's not a big deal. They've got the levels on the crystals, 1 through 5, I think it is, which is fine. It's building from 1 to 5, but it's not just random stats. It's got your base stats, and whatever the numbers they put to those base stats, it is what it is. And you put your crystal in that spot. Perfect. You get the crystals, you put them in there. It becomes about just farming the crystals, getting them to the level you want, and then picking your class for your particular character. So it's more about the class of your character, a resource to put towards the class of your character. And in that regard, Foxnex did a fantastic job. The interface to use on this thing, fantastic. It's easy to figure out. It doesn't take too long. Like I mentioned before, some of the crystals look similar, but with the little bar icon that shows level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you figure it out pretty quickly. They have a great tutorial in it, which really kind of teaches you how to go through it. And they've got the ions that you see. And again, is there enough ions? Who knows? The numbers could change. That's being part of the testing, okay? The way that you see these actual images in game, there's added little icons that you can see, so you can see exactly where or what class someone is given for their ISO-8, and this is in any mode, at least PvP wise. So you'll know if your arena opponent has a fortifier and what level that fortifier is based on the bars. That part is great, easy to see, no problems there. So the part that I want to give the real raw truth about, that I'm still a bit worried about, and is the grind. And again, they're still potentially working on some of this stuff, but I've been a big advocate about gold forever. Saying that gold is a giant bottleneck. We've already got all these bottlenecks. You could never. It take you 9 years to catch up in the gold bottleneck to the backlog of characters based on what we get, and that was like, I think it was only up to like either level 70 or 75. And eventually we're gonna get to level 80. Now, obviously there's no gold required here, so that doesn't worsen that bottleneck. But what it does potentially do is create additional bottlenecks. So we've got gold, we've got red stars, we've got ABCs, we've got SBCs, we got uniques, we have mini uniques, and then the potential for crystals and ions. So we now have a plethora of potential bottleneck resources in the game, and that aspect worries me. And look, you shouldn't be able to get these things quick. You shouldn't have a full roster of level 5 classes in ISO-8. That is not what I'm saying at all. Not at all. But I mean, what do we have characters now? 150-ish? And then they're going to add 4 a month. So if I can't get at least, 3 to 6 characters a month towards the higher level of my ISO classes, I'm never going to catch up, ever. So that aspect really worries me. what I fear in that regard is anybody who's potentially on the fence on this game could be pushed over if they get another bottleneck put on them without lessening another one. Whether it be SBCs, ABCs, gold, red stars, something. I'm worried about that part, plain and simple. I wish I wasn't. I thought about this for multiple days about what I wanted to say, what my thoughts were. And again, I'm only a few days into this test. But I'm worried about it. With the avenues that I've got, given how it's all set up, I'm limited in what I can do. And given what I have in the playtest, and I know this is vague, I'm intentionally being vague because I don't want to talk numbers here and I want to avoid that, is that I didn't feel like I could do too much. And given what I had, I was kind of like, wow, if I've got this and I still can't do that much, what about if I didn't have this? This would be taking insane amount of time. And that's really my biggest concern right now. Just the added grind. So to sum up, fantastic job in the interface, in the simplifying the RNG aspect of it. That part, awesome. I just feel like it is, I don't think they could have done much better in that regard. I really don't. I am pretty happy as far as that goes. And again, the classes, it adds a cool, fun dynamic. I think people will really get into that. I think they'll really try to theory craft around it. I think it allows the player to just come up with all different types of things for different aspects of the game. And that's really cool. I couldn't, congratulate FoxNext enough in doing well in that regard, especially when considering what the last playtest was like. This is, in my opinion, on a different playing field as far as that goes. But I still worry about the grind. But the good thing is things are still subject to change. So, if I'm not the only one who feels this way about the playtest, if I'm not the only one who's worried about additional grinds and additional bottlenecks, we should state that. We should let them know and see if they're willing to listen. Kind of let them know, hey, if you make this too grindy or don't lessen some of the other bottlenecks, I'm not going to be able to take on another bottleneck. Because I think that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, if this becomes too grindy and too much, I will go probably uber casual, where it's just like, it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm just playing the game. I'm having fun with friends, which was what games are supposed to be anyway. But I also am an extremely competitive person, and I like to compete, at least in the top 50-ish. But I wouldn't want to be just, dropping a bunch of cash or grinding nonstop or spending crazy amounts of time trying to optimize perfectly how to do this if they didn't lessen some other bottleneck in the game. So that's my raw truth. That's it. I've had this thing playing in the background. Again, I didn't want to show a bunch of what was in game just at the risk of violating that NDA. I'm sure some other content creators are going to show some stuff in the game. And that's fine. I didn't want to risk it. I've been on the edge. Of risk-wise with the game and potentially poking the bear a little bit. So I don't want to risk that. I want to keep being able to provide content to you guys from an inside information opportunity with Envoy as best I can there without getting the boot. So that's why you got that there. Again, raw truth. Could you handle it? I think you could. Wasn't anything crazy, but I did want to tell you guys really how I felt about it and just kind of, I don't know, I hope. Anyway, comment in the section below. Come to the Discord. That'll be in the link below as well. Share this with your alliance mates. I really want to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on this. Look, the community is one of the most important aspects of this game to me. It's why I keep playing. It's why I've played for this long. Obviously, the Marvel IP helps. That sucks you in. And it keeps you a little bit, but if the community wasn't there. So anyway, I want to hear what you guys have to say. So please come by, come talk to me, send me comments below. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.